Welcome to Beyond the Bay, where we talk with industry experts about their journey through the industry. Today, I've got a special guest, Myles Truck Repair. I've got Vincent and Danny. Thanks for being on today, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So, tell me a little bit about the Myles story, because I know you guys have a quite, your family's been in this industry for a while. Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Sure. So growing up, my father drove for Rooms to Go. He had a fleet of probably 7 tractor trailers, and he would do, home deliveries, things like that, do shuttles, from their terminals. We did a lot of riding in the truck and doing home deliveries. So from an early age, we're always around trucks and we're very familiar with them. And then in 2012, our father Todd bought a shop and we had 2 mechanics, and it's been a wild 13-year ride of growing it. We built a wrecker service. We have multiple locations. We have about 75 employees now, and we're just going to keep growing.
So, you originally started off with a shop repairing your own fleet, and then that turned into customers?
It was kind of a mix. So when we originally bought it, Todd's goal was to have an over-the-road trucking company. He ran a bunch of flatbeds, just hauling various broker commodities, things like that. And then the shop had a few regular fleet customers to kind of fill in, but wasn't, the main goal was not to service other people's trucks. It was to handle our own internal fleet. And then when Danny came on board shortly after he bought it,
A few months after.
yep, we saw a big opportunity there and started pushing marketing and growing it and just doing all kinds of different stuff that we could, make profit with.
So, Vinny, follow up on that. Tell me a little bit more about your history, because my understanding is that you have almost 100 years of history in trucking in your family.
So yeah, a few years back, I, had always kind of heard and known that my family was involved, past my father. And I was speaking to my aunt, and she had all these photos, and I flipped through them for hours. And every time I'd come up with one that had a truck in it, it was like striking gold. I was so excited. And I was able to pull out probably 10 or 15 of them. And I found it going all the way back to my great grandfather. And there's a really cool picture that we'll put up of him in the desert in front of a white truck, which white's not even a manufacturer anymore, turned into Volvo. And he's sitting there shirtless fixing it. And super cool granular picture. And then I even found my great grandfather had a shop in Brooklyn where he fixed horses and buggies later on trucks when trucks were invented. And super cool picture of all his mechanics and his service advisor wearing a suit and tie standing outside. And we recreated that with some of my techs, and I'll provide that to you as well. But just such a cool history lineage. I have one of my grandmother when she was probably 7 or 8 sitting on the hood of a 40s Mac. So we've just always been in this industry. And, I later on found a journal from my grandfather, and he said one of the things he wishes he did was run a business with his brother and his father. So to kind of read his words and see what we've done and accomplished was really cool. It felt like, we are in the right industry. We're doing, his dreams. So we've always been super connected to trucks. Always loved trucks, been interested in them, and it's afforded us good lives and taking care of our families and 75 other families.
And that's something I think a lot of owners don't talk about enough, is what them being successful allows them to give to their employees. One of the things I used to tell owners all the time is nobody wants to work for somebody that's broke. So don't ever be ashamed of making money.
Yeah. Some people think profit's a dirty word. There's a difference between being profitable and greedy. And, I think that you set that standard where profit makes sense, where it's worth coming in every day, and you have a fair agreement with your customers, and you have, fair pay for your employees, and everybody has an understanding, and you're transparent with that. And yeah, keep on keeping on.
So that kind of leads me into a question. When you were growing this, when you two were doing this, number one, you're doing it as a family, which that's an accomplishment in itself. But when you were growing it, what would you say was the hardest thing to overcome when you started scaling the shop? You now have multiple locations and multiple different things. What do you say was the hardest thing to overcome?
Not being involved and letting other people lead.
Yeah, I would agree that in all kinds of factors, whether that be software, trusting them to go out in our trucks, to make sure that the customer leaves happy. I mean, just a multitude of different things, but pretty much to sum it all up, just letting go and trusting people. And honestly, the more we've done it, the easier it's gotten, the better people that we've found, the more that we've allowed people to make their own journey and forge their own path and grow into, responsible managers and leaders. And it's probably been the best thing that we've done.
Even till today, I mean, we just got out of a meeting. We're giving people boxes where they're allowed to have a little bit of leeway as far as pricing or all different things.
But obviously, when you first start, it's tough. You think about it all the time. You worry, how they're speaking to customers, what type of attitude they have. Because obviously it's our baby. We started it, our name's on it, and we want to do everything that we can to be the best. And we just hope that the people that we hire, they have that attitude as well.
So how did you do that? Like, that's probably one of the biggest struggles I see with shop owners is they really have a challenge of letting go and not micromanaging, I think is the catchphrase that most people use. How did you do that? Like, how did you even recognize that you were micromanaging people?
So I think our paths are a lot different. Danny has an accounting degree. He's very versed in finance. So that's awesome because I don't like math. And I'm a little more direct and I'm kind of, the leadership visionary role. So I think that really helped both of us. So my path where I think it really kind of sparked for me was I was driving a heavy wrecker. I went and got my CDL. We got our first heavy wrecker. I was doing that every day and learning the business in and out. And I had seen so many other guys and companies just get burnt out because they, wanted to grow, but you can't grow when you're busy driving an 18 speed, towing a tractor trailer down the road. It doesn't work. You can't take phone calls from customers. You can't make sure, that your employees are doing what they need to be doing. You can't do invoicing. So, I think a lot of it helped that me and Danny could kind of play off each other and he would handle, his side of the house and I'd handle mine. And then it kind of got to the point where, we're like, hey, this is working out. We're busy and we have customers calling and we need another truck and now we need another driver. And it got to the point that my full-time job was to grow the company rather than focus on just operating one truck.
And I think that's a valuable thing that some people fail to recognize when they're in that process of scaling is that most owners don't recognize that they're actually the limiting factor that's stopping the business from growing because they fail to recognize that really you're the roadblock because
Yeah.
you can only do so much.
And you've helped me notice that a lot. So in our time together, I definitely feel like I've, tried to grow as a leader with letting my leaders grow.
Well, I think that's a valuable point too, that that's another thing that owners tend to not recognize is that there is resources out there. I know that you used a keyword, used the word visionary, and I know that you've gone down the path of EOS. How has EOS helped, clarify your organization?
It's been huge. We're only about 3 months in it. For anybody that is considering it, I think, definitely look into it. We did not go the self-implementation route. There's kind of two routes where you can try to do it yourself or you can get someone who has experience and history with it. And, we found a really good implementer that synced up with and, his ideals and our ideals lined up. And, it really helped me slow down and it helped give accountability to our team. Even one of our leaders, our guy who leads sales and marketing, he said, wow, I got my work cut out for me, and he wants to come to these meetings now prepared and, not be the guy who didn't do his to-dos. And it just kind of gives everybody accountability on what their role is, their responsibility, what they're supposed to get done, what they need to track. And it really has been an awesome tool. I mean, at the end of the day, though, it's us doing the work. And that's the coolest thing. It's something where if you're not going to put the effort in, it's not going to do it for you. You have to build out your scorecards, track your metrics. You have to be able to, say, hey, this is your role. This is what you're doing and have some uncomfortable conversations with your leaders. But in the end, you're better for it and they're better for it.
It really holds us accountable because we don't want to go in there and explain why we didn't get something done in front of the leadership team.
And I think that's a very valuable point is accountability. And I think that's something that I know that Vinny, you and I talked about early on is that who is an owner accountable to? Like, I know that, you're over employees and you hold them accountable, but who holds you accountable as an owner? And I think that's a really good question owners need to ask themselves is who are you accountable to? And because let's face it, it's not hard to lie to yourself. I mean, you could look at a situation and be like, it was okay, this happened or that happened and really kind of brush it off. But when there's somebody there holding you accountable, it's kind of like when you go to the gym, if you have a buddy and you go together with people, they've proven that really drives people to be more consistent. What would you say the best takeaway is, Danny, from EOS, from your standpoint, from being in the finance side of it?
We've really created a culture here in the leadership team of you're allowed to challenge people. Everything's open. Nobody's going to get their feelings hurt. So if someone sees something that they think is wrong, they'll tell us and I'll help dig into it.
Yeah, and I think that was actually something that EOS brought up that I would have never gone down this path, and that was reading a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And there's a lot of really good pointers in there that kind of explain why teams don't work. And I think a lot of it was that what you just said, the trust and the accountability, not just accountability down, but accountability up.
Sure.
I think accountability is two-way.
There's 5 people in there with big opinions and we make it work. I mean, what has it been, 3 months, and we're just a lot more open. It's worked out really well.
And that's where a good implementer helps, because,
Yeah.
they say the biggest thing is you don't want to leave one of your focus days, where you're working through it and feel like, oh man, I wish I would have said this. They say leave it all out on the table. And, at the end of the day, like I said, it makes all of us better for it. And it makes us all accountable to each other.
So tell me about culture. I know that you had just mentioned that word, but how did you build your shop culture, and what does that look like today?
So for us, we always wanted to be the best. I mean, even to this day, we've seen kind of dealerships, with us having our own fleet of over the road trucks. We've dealt with, Rush, all these big dealers, and you kind of see the way they do it. And they have a very good professional attitude, clean shop, that kind of stuff. A lot of times it just maybe feels a little cold. So that's really where we wanted to kind of merge our world. We wanted to be, you walk in the shop and you go, oh man, this is a diesel shop. This place is, ridiculous clean. It's organized. Everybody has nice uniforms on, parts are organized. But you also get someone on the phone that really cares, that has been there, that they know what it's like to have a truck that's broke down, the stress of it, and they show that care. So I think as far as the culture side to the way that we handle, any potential customers, that's really the focus. Might be towing, body shop, truck repair, just have some sympathy for that person, because it's a bad day. I mean, nobody wants to get their truck fixed. Nobody wants to be in an accident. And, I think the way that you can make it terrible is by being a jerk to somebody. I mean, they should hear something that instills confidence and says, all right, we'll get through this day. And
I think
that's
that's a good
definitely,
point. Because I used to teach that to my staff too. It's like, look, you got to think of this like going to the ER. When you go to the ER, you're not having the best day of your life, and you really don't want that person behind the counter to be a jerk to you. You got to think about it the same way. When a person calls up and has to have their truck towed off the side of the interstate, they are not having a good day. This was not planned.
Yeah, our mission that we push to everyone is making bad days better.
yep. And then,
And I think
that trickles over to the type of employee that we want here. We want them to build their own destiny, whether that be through commission paid plans or, growth to a leadership role. And, they can kind of just exude that by how they carry themselves around customers and other employees.
And I know that we've had conversations about this. You've done a really good job of being able to show people not just that you have a culture, but what the culture is. And have you found at all that became a selling point when you were hiring or you were interviewing technicians?
Always, every time, every employee we talk to, whether it be someone that's office staff, whether it's a truck driver, whether it's a tech, that's always a selling point. And, for some people, it's not a selling point because they don't fit that culture. And, it's best for both of us to not go down this path and, them not be a good fit.
If they're going to come in for an interview on a Friday, they're going to see, everybody eating lunch. Our Friday lunches
Company
that we do.
sponsored lunch.
Company sponsored lunches
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually a trick I used because we went to my mom's house 3 days a week for lunch. We literally went across the street to grandma's house at my shop. But I would purposely schedule interviews right at lunchtime on Wednesdays because we were going to grandma's house
Smart.
for lunch.
Smart.
And that's something too, though, that, you guys have recognized. Why would someone want to work for you? You mentioned Rush, they're one of the biggest dealership networks in the country. And I bring that up to a lot of shop owners. I said, look, I stand in their shop and I'm like, why would someone want to work here? They're like, well,
Yeah.
what do you mean? And I'm like, they could just go down the street and work for Rush. Like, why would they come here? And then very few guys have answers to that. And I said, look, you need to figure that out and you need to sell it. Because
Yeah.
that's really what you're doing in an interview with a technician. They're not interviewing you. They've got 4 or 5 job offers. You're actually trying to sell yourself to them.
Yeah. And I think it's more than just, the dollar. I mean, of course, that's super important. We're all in this to make money. So, you have to be a top payer. You have to give people incentives. But, it's things like new trucks. We buy boots every year, having a nice facility, having, a action plan to move up and, be where you want to be in a couple years. So, yeah, definitely, I agree completely. You need to sell yourself. And I think when you come to one of our facilities, you see one of our trucks going down the road, all that, it speaks for who we are and what we're trying to accomplish.
And I think you just said something that's very, very important that few shop owners ever recognize. And that's that when you're interviewing someone and you're trying to hire them, if you cannot show them a career path to advancement, they're not going to see a future with you.
And if they don't want that advancement, they're probably not going to fit our culture, because we want people that are coming in saying, I want to make this a career. I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking somewhere to plant my feet and to grow with you guys. And, that's how we grow, is to have people that want that.
Well, and that's something I know, Danny, you've done a really good, Danny, you've done from the financial side. Like, I know you guys are very good about showing people that financial path. And I've really seen it too with you, Vinny, is the selling the vision. Like, this is why we do what we do. And very few shops take the time to actually articulate to their people and to
Yeah.
their
And to speak to that, we actually just
customers.
put a financial advisor on retainer just for the employees. I mean, they can ask any question. Should I get a HELOC? Should I, if I want to retire at 65, what should that look like?
Can we review our 401k? I mean, so it's all these little things that, kind of add up. And honestly, it's gotten to the point that when we are interviewing and selling ourselves, I mean, we're just kind of blown back by how many things we offer, and we love it. We want to keep offering more. It's just, whatever we could do more to, allow these guys to grow, because it's hard work. I mean, what these guys do, I haven't had it as much in the tech field. I'm not very mechanic savvy, but I did drive a truck for a few years, and was able to kind of get my experience there. And these guys that do it, I mean, they deserve to be able to make a good career, to make good money, to know they have benefits, to know that they have security, and that's super important to us as owners, and as we continue to grow.
Well, and that's a good point too. I think a lot of shop owners want to offer that, but they can't because financially they aren't in a position to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that's where understanding, numbers and financials, and of course you guys are blessed because
So I got this
one
guy.
of you, what have you guys the finance, like I have to honest, I struggled when I first started my shop because I didn't understand numbers. Like I would look at the checkbook on Friday, and if I had money in the bank, I was like, cool, we did good this week. And I had no idea about cash flow. I mean, we were still on cash accounting. I didn't even know what accrual meant. When my bookkeeper brought up accrual accounting, I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, definitely having a good CPA, having, all the people in place, having a good attorney, all those things, they matter. And, obviously you don't want to think about that. You just want to focus on, doing the work, getting the trucks fixed, right? And obviously that's a huge part of it. But if you're not doing the back end stuff, and, kind of like what you just said, a lot of people can't afford it. I mean, well, we can't not afford to take care of these people and give them the best opportunity, because the
And
competition out there is fierce.
we've set them up where if we're paying them big paychecks, we love it because that means we're doing better.
Yeah, I used to pull guys in my office and they'd be like, what? And I'm like, I'm not paying you enough. They'd be like, what do you mean? I'm like, you haven't hit bonus for 6 weeks. Like, what's going on? Like, don't you want money? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, so what are we going to do here? And he's like, I've never had anybody ask me that. I just do the same thing in an interview. I would ask an employee, I said, well, how much money do you want to make? And they would always go off and be like, well, so-and-so down the street's going to give me $27 an hour. And I'm like, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, write a number on the paper. How much do you want? And we will get there. Like, and I did kind of what you did, and maybe we can share that sheet that you have where it shows the career path. I could literally give them a sheet and said, this is how you get there.
Yep. 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 Definitely.
So let me ask you about something. What is it now? About a year ago, we went down a path and you reached out to me, Vinny, to do coaching. Why did you hire a coach? And what effect did that have on you as a person, as an individual, as the owner? And then how did it affect your business?
So we have kind of gone down this path with a few different people, and there's always pieces that you can get from it that are beneficial. What was so cool about you is that you're linked with Full Bay, and we've had Full Bay for 8 years now, I want to say, and they've just been a huge tool. It was a lot to learn at first, and still is. I mean, they're always improving. So to have someone like you that's an expert with it helps a ton, because it is a beast to learn. And there was so many things that we weren't doing that you were able to show us, that we adjusted, turned on, whatever we had to do, that helped us with reporting, things like that, which in the long run helps everybody here. Set us up for success. As far as personally, something that me and you've talked about a lot is I have a hard time keeping that bobber in the water. As a visionary, as the pusher, I always want to make change, and if I feel like something's not working, I want to change it right away. With the talks from you, with EOS, with structure and those kind of things, I feel like my patience has grown and my understanding has grown, so that we can wait and see how things turn out. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things that you've given me personally, is, the confidence to be patient, the confidence in my team to do what they need to do. As far as us as a company, you've helped us kind of bring culture up to speed in a lot of ways that we were lacking. You really helped us on the Full Bay side. I can't say enough about that. And just, overall confidence, positivity. I mean, just kind of encouragement on how to push this and blow it up and make it huge.
Yeah. And on the financial side, I mean, obviously we got a pretty decent handle on it. I know where our net should be and that kind of thing, but to be able to needle down and have benchmarks on what margins should be at on parts, on different kinds of labor, different kinds of jobs.
I think that's a valuable point. I think a lot of shops miss the mark that you should be charging different labor rates for different things that you do. Like, I have to have this conversation a lot, and I'll ask somebody, do you pay the guy that does check engine lights the same as the kid that changes oil? And of course, they always say no. And I would always ask them, then why do you charge the same labor rate? Like, why would you charge the same labor rate when your cost of labor is higher? Or kind of like, I know this was a big one. We went down this path. Why did you have so much overtime when I met you?
Sure. Yeah, that was a great one, and for us it was differentiating what's good work, what's bad work, how do we schedule it the right way to make it all good work. And for us it was, well, we have the work, let's work these guys. And now we've gotten to a point that everybody is working 40 hours a week, but they're making the same or more. And they're happier, we're happier, the productivity's higher. So that was definitely another huge thing that you helped us work through.
We're about to start closing on Saturdays too.
Yeah, and that's a valid thing. I know I asked that question a lot. I think you guys got tired of me asking that. Like, why are you open on Saturdays? And you're like, well, we get so much work done. I said, do you actually get the work done on Saturdays, or do you close it on Saturdays? Because let's be honest.
Yeah.
You didn't overhaul an engine on Saturday.
Yeah.
You maybe buttoned it up on Saturday. And I'm not saying don't do overtime. My thing is I like to really show people objective numbers, like overtime. I ask questions. If a cost of a part was increased by 50%, would you charge more for a radiator? And everybody says yes. And then I said, okay, then when your cost of labor increased by 50%, why don't you charge more?
Yeah. Yeah. How bad do they need it done? Yep. Do they need it done that day? And we're still structured in a lot of ways that, we're never going to turn it down. So, just because our doors are locked and the shop's closed on Saturday, we still have road service, we have towing, we're training our salespeople to, get these customers in. So Monday morning we can have hands on it first thing. So I think in a lot of ways,
Right.
you got to keep your eyes open and take on as much work as you can, as long as it's a good job, like we talked about, and it's profitable.
It goes back to your whole
Well,
thing
and that's
about
it.
perception versus reality. I mean, we really thought that we were doing a lot of work on Saturdays, but when you start looking at the numbers, we're not.
And let's face it, it's really hard to hire technicians if you tell them you have to work Saturdays.
It's definitely a great selling point that we're not even open on Saturday.
Right. And, you're absolutely right. You don't want to say no to your customer. I just think business owners have to be really serious about, look, this is what it costs to do this. So this is what we have to charge the customer to make a profit. And if we're not here to make a profit, why are we doing this? Like, why would you come in and work Saturdays, pay a tech overtime, and not make any money?
Stress them out. They don't want to be there anyway. But that's
And
where someone like you, who's objective, and you're coming in as a third party and you're not in it every day, where it's super beneficial because you can kind of say, hey, look at it this way. Try to pull yourself out of it and look at the numbers, look at it this way. And, it takes a little time, and that's what you kind of help push us to do. And, as we've made these changes, we've seen benefit from them.
Well, and I think that's a valuable lesson too, is that whole step back, slow down, take a 30,000-foot view. And one of the lenses that I tell people to look through is look at it this way. If someone else were to come in and run your shop, say they bought it and they were going to run it tomorrow, would they do the same things you're doing? And then there's always something they look at and say, no, I don't think that person would do that. Or better yet, could you justify this to someone else? Like, say you brought in a partner tomorrow that bought an interest in it because they were going to influx some cash and you wanted to go buy another facility. If you had to justify some of the decisions you make to them, could you do it? Like, could you sell them on it? And if the
Not all
answer
of
is
them.
no, you really got to ask yourself, should I be doing this? I mean, let's face it, everybody wants to be able to drive a brand new fancy 3/4 ton diesel leather truck. But if you can't afford it yet, do you really need it? You know what I mean? So I've seen so many people make these mistakes there, or they go out and buy a brand new tow truck, spend $750,000. It's like, do you really need a brand new truck now? And those are kind of some of the things that I think that I like to really bring up and evaluate. And they're hard. Like, I'm sure you went through this process working with me, and some of the questions were they probably stung a little bit, honestly.
Sure. Yeah. Especially at first, I think it's a lot of reality check. I think, for anybody that is considering coaching, they need to understand that they have to make changes. That, having a coach is great, and you could say all the words to us in the world, but if we don't act on them, there's no point. So you have to be able to take a hard look in the mirror and say, man, we do need a change. This is no good. And it was a process, and it's always going to be a process. I mean, things are constantly evolving and changing, and, you just got to kind of predict where the industry's going and where you want to go with it and try to match up.
Well, I think another thing too is pay attention to numbers. I know, Danny, you and I have had some conversation on numbers, and to build on this whole, you kind of reevaluated labor. I think we went down that path and we looked at it and stepped back and looked at the numbers, and your guys' margins actually went up. You
Yeah.
actually were more profitable when you got rid of all the overtime and got rid of all this extra working. And honestly, I think your employees became more productive. I mean, from the numbers I saw, they actually increased efficiency.
Yeah, they did. Everyone's getting paid more, and we're making more profit.
And they're working less.
Yeah, and working
I
less.
mean, it's the
Yeah.
best of
I
both
mean,
worlds.
that's like the dream, isn't it? You make more money and
it.
work less.
Yeah, you told us that. I'm like, you're lying. That doesn't work. What are you talking about?
Now
Well,
service
it's kind of like
advisors are going to
parts.
commission. Everyone's about to be only or no, half commission, half salary very soon.
Well, and I think a big part too, another big area that most shops miss the mark is on parts. You know, parts it's probably roughly half the revenue of most facilities, but it's probably the least looked at thing. You know, a lot of shops just look at parts as a necessary evil. Do you have any tips or things that you've done with parts recently that have helped to increase the margins?
Don't stock 3 turbos for a Detroit 60 and never use them.
We
You know,
stock as little as possible. Get consignment for your inventory.
Yep, definitely work consignment. You definitely want to, do everything you can to push your vendors. I mean, the thing about it is you can buy, the same part from Peterbilt, from Kenworth, from Volvo, from whoever. I mean, if you're looking for a Cummins part, you can get it from any vendors. You got to make them work for the business. Don't just call up there and say, we'll take this. I mean, you need to do what's best for your shop. And then for us, we have just a killer parts manager. Her name's Lindsay, and she's just excellent. We put her on a commission plan, and she's hungry to find the best deal for us, and really just manage your inventory too. I mean, we see a lot of guys that's what they do. They got a parts
It's out of control.
I know. And that's actually one of my go-to things. One of the very first things I pick on in a shop is I walk in and say, why are you stocking a clutch? Well, we sell 3 of them a month. How long does it take you to get a clutch? 20 minutes. How long does it take to change a clutch? 10 hours. Do you think you have enough time to get a clutch from the time you start until you need it? Probably. Why are we stocking it?
Yeah, we were definitely guilty of that.
And I think those are examples of the hard questions that have to be asked if you're really going to turn a shop around and you really want to, if you truly care about making money, which I hope most owners do, you kind of have to ask yourself things like that. Like, why do we stock this? And do you understand inventory turn? Do you understand inventory cost? Like so many owners don't understand that you need to look at that clutch on the shelf. It's $500 bills sitting there doing nothing.
Yep.
Like
And
that money
turns,
is not,
cores,
yeah.
I
Right.
mean, it can get out of hand fast. I mean, Full Bay is a huge tool. I think too, when we switched that, they have an awesome, whole parts section that you've kind of helped us work through, whether it be your margin, managing returns, managing cores, and just putting a clear expectation on, you can't of course sit here for more than a couple days. It needs to be picked up. We need a credit for it. Because we were real guilty of that, where it would be 3 months later and we'd say, hey, where's the core for this? And they're like, we don't know. The box had a stain on it. We can't issue you a credit. And, you do that too many times and you're out of business.
Or you make the mistake of buying a clutch sitting on the shelf and then realize you didn't return the core within 3 months. They're never going to give you a core credit back, ever.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that mark gets missed quite a bit. Danny and Vincent, thanks for being on today. I appreciate your time and for you sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and thank you for the insight and helping us grow our business. You've been an awesome part of what we've accomplished here, and anybody who is looking to get a leg up, definitely reach out to Peter.
Definitely.